The clouds over a small Texas college town hung heavy and gray, releasing a steady drizzle that slicked the streets. Mark Davis, 23 and weary beyond his years, walked with his head lowered, his backpack dragging down one shoulder. He was in his final year of law school, balancing studies, a part-time job, and a mountain of debt left behind by his late father. Life felt like it was closing in tighter with each passing day. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Mark answered with a tired, "Mark Davis speaking." A controlled, almost regal voice replied, "Mr. Davis, this is Eleanor Brooks. I'd like to meet you. It concerns your financial situation." Mark frowned. "I'm sorry. Who are you? How do you know about?" "I know enough," the woman cut him off smoothly. "Meet me at Brooks Bistro, 7 sharp. Don't be late." The call ended abruptly, leaving Mark staring at his screen in confusion. Who was this woman, and how did she know about his debts? Against his better judgment, he went. The rain fell harder as he reached the upscale cafe, his jacket soaked through. Inside, warmth and the aroma of roasted coffee surrounded him. At a corner table sat a striking older woman with silver hair styled elegantly. She wore a tailored suit that screamed wealth. "Mark," she greeted, gesturing for him to sit. Her voice was calm yet carried an authority that demanded attention. He sat warily. "Mrs. Brooks, what is this about?" "Straightforward." "I like that," she replied, sipping her tea. "I know about your debts, the ones your father left behind. You're barely surviving. I'm here to offer you a way out." Mark's brow furrowed. "And what exactly are you suggesting?" She set down her cup, her piercing blue eyes locking on his. "Marry me." The words seemed unreal. Mark blinked, certain he'd misheard. "I'm sorry. What? You heard me. This is not about romance. Think of it as a contract. I will pay off every debt, secure your financial stability, and in return, you will be my husband." Mark gave a disbelieving laugh. "You're serious? Why me? You don't even know me." "That's precisely why," Eleanor said, leaning forward. "You're young, unattached, desperate enough to consider this. I don't need love, Mr. Davis. I need companionship, someone to share my name and estate. A husband gives legitimacy to my legacy. That's all." Mark shook his head. "This is insane. What's in it for you?" For the first time, her voice softened. "I've lived alone for years. No children, no family left. I want a companion. Even if only for appearances, I want someone by my side." Mark stood abruptly, the chair scraping the floor. "I can't. This is too much. I need time." "Of course," she said coolly. "But don't take too long. My offer won't last forever." That night, Mark sat at the kitchen table with his mother, explaining what had happened. His mother, frail and pale from her treatments, listened silently. "Mark," she said gently when he finished. "I know it sounds unthinkable, but maybe it's worth considering." "You're asking me to marry a stranger," Mark said, his voice heavy. "A woman I don't love. Just to pay off debts." "I'm asking you to save us," she whispered. "To save yourself. Sometimes sacrifices must be made." The next morning, still conflicted but overwhelmed by desperation, Mark returned to the bistro. Eleanor sat waiting, poised as ever. "You've decided?" she asked without looking up from her tablet. Mark swallowed hard. "Yes, I'll do it." "Good," she replied, a faint smile crossing her face. "Arrangements will be made immediately." A week later, Mark found himself standing in a courthouse, dressed in a suit Eleanor had provided. The ceremony was brief and clinical, attended only by Eleanor's lawyer and a notary. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Eleanor turned to him with a smile that felt more like a mask. "Welcome to your new life, Mr. Davis." As their cab rolled through the gates of Eleanor's vast estate, Mark stared at the looming mansion. With its towering columns and immaculate facade, it looked more like a museum than a home. Yet its windows seemed cold and lifeless. Inside, Eleanor greeted him formally. "Welcome, Mr. Davis. Dinner will be at 7. The grand bedroom prepared for him was lavish, with antique furniture and garden views, but it felt suffocating. At dinner, Eleanor sat at the far end of a massive table, cutting her food with precision. "This place is overwhelming," Mark admitted cautiously. "Feels like I'll get lost." "You'll adapt," she replied curtly. "Or you won't. Either way, you're here." Trying to lighten the mood, Mark asked about her late husband. Eleanor's knife paused mid-cut. She dabbed her lips with a napkin. He was a businessman. Like your father. Their paths crossed once or twice. Not all encounters ended well. What do you mean? Mark asked, his pulse quickening. Unfinished business tends to linger, she said cryptically before changing the subject. That night, Mark wandered the halls, noticing locked doors that seemed to hide secrets. The staff spoke in whispers, their eyes darting away when he approached. One evening in the library, Mark discovered a small ornate key left on Eleanor's desk. Heart racing, he slipped it into his pocket. Later that night, he crept down the hall and used the key on one of the locked doors. Inside, he found a room frozen in time, dusty furniture, faded wallpaper, and old photographs. Among them were documents detailing failed business deals between his father and Eleanor's late husband. A letter accused his father of fraud, blaming him for Harold Brooks's downfall. Mark's breath caught when he found a marriage license with his own name and Eleanor's, dated weeks before their actual wedding. On the desk lay Eleanor's diary, filled with bitter words. I will take everything from him, just as his father took everything from me. He will be my pawn. The door creaked. Eleanor stood in the doorway, her face a mask of icy calm. Enjoying yourself? She asked. Mark stammered. I just. You think you can understand what drives me? She interrupted coldly. Your father ruined my family. I will not let that go unpunished. This isn't justice, Mark snapped. It's revenge. And you've dragged me into it. You signed the papers willingly, Eleanor said with a cruel smile. Don't forget that. From that night, Mark knew he was trapped in more than just a marriage, he was ensnared in Eleanor's vendetta. He confided in the head butler, Mr. Harris, who quietly admitted, you're not the first young man to be pulled into her world. Be careful, Mark. Mark began seeking legal loopholes with the help of a trusted law school friend, Peter. With Peter's guidance and the help of a private investigator, Mark uncovered evidence not only of Eleanor's long-standing grudge but also her current fraudulent schemes. Finally, Mark confronted her. Standing in the grand sitting room, he laid the documents before her. I know everything. About my father. About Harold. About what you've been doing. For the first time, Eleanor faltered. Her voice, usually steady, cracked with anger. Do you think this makes us even? Your father destroyed my life. And now you're destroying mine, Mark retorted. When does it end? Before she could answer, the sound of tires outside announced the arrival of the police. Officers entered with Peter, presenting a warrant for her arrest. You called them, Eleanor said, her eyes blazing. You left me no choice, Mark answered. As she was led away, she turned back with chilling finality. Be careful, Mark. Revenge has a way of consuming more than its target. Months later, Mark attended her trial. His testimony helped convict her, though he had spoken truthfully, not vengefully. Before sentencing, Eleanor glanced back at him, offering a faint nod that seemed almost like an apology. Days after the trial, Mark was summoned to the estate. The lawyer handed him a deed and a letter in Eleanor's elegant script. It was never about money, Mark. It was about closure. Harold deserved justice, but I lost myself in the process. Use this estate for something better. Mark sold the mansion without hesitation. With the proceeds, he cleared his family's debts and created a scholarship in Harold Brooks's name, transforming a legacy of bitterness into something that could heal. Returning to law school, Mark carried not just the burden of his father's mistakes but the determination to rise above them. Eleanor had tried to make him a pawn in her revenge, but in the end, he chose his own path, one that turned pain into purpose.